The storm that changed everything. The city never truly slept, but on nights like this, it felt half alive. Cold, ruthless, unforgiving. Jake Carter sat curled under the awning of a closed bookstore, his coat soaked through, his body trembling. Hunger gnawed at his insides. His fingers, stiff and numb, clutched an old, faded photograph, one he barely remembered taking. It was him years ago, a different life, a different man. Lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating the empty streets in flashes of white. A few feet away, a stray dog rummaged through a tipped-over trash can. Jake exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. He had nothing left. No dreams, no future, no reason to hope. Then he heard footsteps. Steady, unhurried, purposeful. A shadow passed through the misty glow of a street lamp. The shape of a woman, wrapped in a long, crimson coat. She slowed as she approached. Unlike others who ignored him, who crossed the street to avoid him, she stopped. Jake lifted his gaze, expecting the usual expression of pity or disgust. But there was neither. There was something else, something familiar. She crouched down, her face partially hidden beneath the hood. Her eyes, deep, knowing, searching, held a sadness that mirrored his own. "You don't belong here," she said softly. Jake let out a dry, hollow chuckle. Tell that to fate. A small, almost imperceptible smile flickered across her lips. Then, without a word, she reached into her coat and pulled out a thick bundle of cash. Jake's breath hitched. This wasn't pocket change. She placed it in his hand, her fingers briefly brushing against his. "Take this." Jake frowned. "Why?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because once someone did the same for me." A million questions raced through his mind, but before he could ask a single one, she was gone, vanishing into the storm, leaving him with nothing but the weight of a second chance, and a feeling in his chest that he couldn't explain. The Relentless Rise. That night, Jake made a decision. This money wouldn't be wasted. He bought a thrift store suit, a hot meal, and used the rest to get himself into a real estate seminar. He sat in the back, absorbing every word, every lesson, every secret of success. Then he marched into the nearest real estate office. The broker eyed him with skepticism. Experience? None. Education? Didn't finish college. The man sighed, shaking his head. "Listen, kid. Give me 1 week," Jake cut in. His tone was sharp, confident, desperate in the way only a man with nothing to lose can be. "If I don't outsell your top agent, fire me." The room fell silent. Then, after a long pause, "Phoenix." Jake worked like a man possessed. He studied market trends while others slept. He memorized sales pitches while others drank. He cold called 100 clients before noon and knocked on 100 doors before sunset. By day 5, he closed his first deal. By day 30, he was outselling everyone in the office. By year 1, he was making 6 figures. By year 5, he was a millionaire. But no amount of success erased the memory of that night, of the woman in the red coat, the one who had saved him, and he was going to find her, no matter what it took. The night, he found her again. It happened at a charity gala, one of those high society events where the rich clinked glasses and pretended to care about the world outside their penthouses. Jake wasn't interested in the conversations about stocks or European vacations. But then, he saw her, across the ballroom. Isabel. She stood near the grand piano, laughing softly, her fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. Jake's chest tightened. 5 years. 5 damn years. Before he knew what he was doing, his feet carried him forward. "You," he whispered. She turned, and for a moment the world stopped. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Then something deeper, something unspoken. "You finally found me," she murmured. His throat was dry. "Why did you help me that night?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the glass. "Because you reminded me of someone." Jake's pulse quickened. "Who?" She swallowed hard. "Someone I loved." A truth too impossible to believe. Days turned into weeks, and Jake and Isabel fell into a rhythm that felt like fate itself. Long walks through Central Park, Midnight conversations where past wounds were unraveled. Stolen kisses in the golden glow of streetlights. He was going to marry her. But then, he found the photograph. Jake arrived at her penthouse one evening to find her sitting on the floor, clutching an old, yellowed picture in shaking hands. "Isabel?" he asked cautiously. She didn't look up. Jake stepped closer, and his breath caught in his throat. The man in the photo was him. Same sharp jawline, same piercing eyes, even the same scar above his eyebrow. But the photograph was from 20 years ago. Jake's mind reeled. Who is this? Isabel's voice was barely a whisper. His name was Samuel Hart. He was my fiancé, and he died in a car accident 20 years ago. A cold chill slid down Jake's spine. His voice was hoarse. That's impossible. She lifted her eyes, filled with something between love and fear. You don't understand, she said. You look exactly like him. You talk like him. You even smile the same way. Jake's pulse thundered. The exact day Samuel Hart had died was the day Jake Carter was born. The realization crushed the air from his lungs. Jake, she whispered, do you believe in second chances? A love that could never be. They tried. God, they tried. But no matter how deeply Jake loved her, no matter how desperately Isabel wanted to move forward, she could never look at him without seeing the ghost of a love she had already lost. And Jake could never escape the feeling that he was chasing a life that was never his to begin with. One evening, under the same rain-soaked sky where they had first met, Isabel made her decision. I love you, Jake, she said, but I think I was meant to love you before, and I don't know if I can do it again. Jake's heart shattered, but he didn't stop her. He simply stood there, watching as she walked away, just as she had 5 years ago. Only this time, she wasn't coming back. Final thought. Some love stories don't end. They pause, waiting for the next life. And maybe, just maybe, Jake Carter would find her again.